first 2/3 of today is all about understanding complex PTSD. It's all about understanding how it develops, and because for a lot of people that have complex PTSD, they do not know they're traumatized because it's not been the single incident. It's not been the one lightning strike combat trauma or motor vehicle accident. It's been a progression of chronic trauma throughout their development. And they just see that as their development. They don't see that as trauma. And so being able to start to see how those early attachment experiences turn into these myriad of symptoms that we see in adult is, I want you guys to understand that. I want you to have a really good understanding of how those attachment experiences turn into what is diagnosed as bipolar, borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, how all of those kind of things, how it all can kind of shake out looking like that as a result of those attachment experiences. And also, hopefully, the way that I've done this course is to with both understanding, but also how to unravel the rubber bands inside of the golf ball, like starting to really understand what this constellation is in this person sitting across from you. And when you understand what experiences have happened to create this, then the unpacking of it becomes much more organized. And you know what needs to happen for people to not have those symptoms anymore. And so that's what I want to leave you guys with today, is a full-on understanding of why and how people end up with, first of all, what it is. We're going to spend the first part of the morning doing what is complex PTSD, and then those ways that it manifests into all of those different symptoms, and then looking at the treatment process for how to resolve all of that. Tomorrow, as I said, we'll be focused on the early phases of treatment, of how to manage the intake, the assessment, the interview, how to build positive expectancy, we will revisit feedback-informed therapy. The most important thing that you're going to do with people that have complex PTSD, the most important treatment aspect is your ability to elicit negative feedback about you and the experience from your clients. That's the most important aspect of treating complex PTSD, is where your clients are safe enough with you that they can start to tell you honestly what is not working in treatment, so that you can attenuate better to fit them. And that process of being able to elicit that feedback and being genuine about that, and that becoming a collaborative relationship, is treatment proper. So we'll spend some time talking about that. And then all of those really cool safety and stabilization skills, and I've got several under relaxation, several under containment, several under grounding, and several under expression. And I'm going to show you how to keep your clients out of the hospital. That's what we'll finish with tomorrow, is how, if they start becoming regressed, of how to resolve that regression. And then Friday is all about kind of then moving into the resolution of the bigger symptoms, of working with the intrusive symptoms, so flashbacks and nightmares, of how to go back and resolve trauma memories that are intruding, how to work with somatization and how to treat somatization, how to work with and treat dissociation. So those are the kind of the big dogs that you're working with when you're working with complex PTSD, is intrusion. Everything else gets resolved. All those other symptoms get resolved with self-regulation. But intrusion, somatization, dissociation usually needs some specialized skills, and I'm going to walk you through that. Now, last thing I'll say to get us oriented is the way that I've chosen to do this course is, I've been doing this for a long time, but I'm not nearly as smart as a whole lot of other folks in this field that have been doing specifically complex PTSD. So what I've done is I've sniffed out, I've got probably, I don't know, 10 or 12 videos today, probably 15 or more tomorrow of the big dogs telling you about their work. I've got videos with Dan Siegel, with Bruce Perry, with Stephen Porges, with Peter Levine, Robert Scare, kind of all of Janai Fisher, and also down here I've got a lending library of a lot of the books that I've used to build this course. If any of you are interested in taking any of those books, I've got an index card on there. You're welcome to take those, write the name of the book and your name, your name, telephone, and email address, and you're welcome to take those and kind of look at them and during the time of the course, or hang on to them for a little while and then just make sure you get them back. And those are a lot of the texts that I used for this course. I think that's all I need to say by way of preamble. So let's get started. We're going to do some introductory stuff here in just a second, but I want to start with, in my work of putting this together, I came upon this this symbol of the semicolon, and have seen a whole lot of people and started kind of digging into it and learning about it, and there's a lot of people that are have that tattoo. Does anybody know what the semicolon means?
I'm still going.
Still going, yeah. That it has kind of become the symbol for complex PTSD. And I love that quote right there where it says, is used when the author could have chosen to end their sentence, but chose not to continue the sentence anyway. And I just think that's kind of prolific because anybody that you ever work with who has complex PTSD has survived suicidal ideation more than once. Most of them have had attempts. That suicide is, they are one bad day away from a suicidal crisis before they get into treatment. And that becomes a self-soothing strategy for a whole lot of folks with complex PTSD. The way that they get to bed tonight is to soothe themselves by saying, if it's worse tomorrow, I'll kill myself. That becomes a coping strategy that with suicide being back here, and that they've chosen not to is a miracle. It really is. I mean, when you look back over the life of somebody who has complex PTSD and they've survived it, it's always, anytime that I'm sitting across from somebody, I always have these kind of moments of just awe of the way that they've been able to survive their life, because they've been in an incredible amount of pain. And I like to think that we are the semicolon. We are the semicolon in the lives of our clients. I just think that that's a pretty cool metaphor to think about what a clinician's job is to continue that damn sentence, is to help them to move on to the second half of their life. This was survival. This is you reclaiming, and I'll talk about this more tomorrow. Like, any of y'all work with borderlines? Anybody have experience with borderlines? Have you read Kohut or Kernberg? Are you familiar with those two? Those are the two kind of object relations back in the 60s, 50s and 60s. They were the ones that kind of built the whole treatment structure for borderline personality disorder. And Kernberg said that you're on the downhill side of borderline treatment when a borderline grieves the loss of symbiosis. Anybody know what that means? It is when they realize that they're not going to ever get that relationship that they get to fall into and be on autopilot. Because that's what they're kind of looking for, is they're looking for the relationship that they can just relax into, and that they're on autopilot for the rest of their lives. That's the kind of wish fulfillment that goes on with folks. Once they realize that that's not ever coming, then it starts to be an internal, it starts to become an internal motivation for them to change. But as long as that hope's out there, then they keep kind of going out to the universe, out to the world, out to relationships, hoping to find their redemption out there, and it always ends up in pain. Always, always, always. So once that they kind of realize that that's not going to ever happen, that shifts. Well, with complex PTSD, here's what is the shift that I've kind of discovered. Is that the moment that your complex PTSD client has empathy for their past self, you're on the downhill side. The moment that it shifts from shame to where they start going, oh my God, that was a lot. And they start to have compassion and empathy for their history, for that 6-year-old, for that 12-year-old, for that 18-year-old that survived all of those experiences. And what's cool about that, the shift that happens in session, what you see as a clinician, is they stop showing up in treatment like this, with their leg bouncing and their head down, and they start showing up as champions for their younger self. And they start wanting to build a life now of quality and honorance of what this younger self survived so that they could be here in the present. That's what happens when you do good treatment, is that they start to take up the mantle of delivering to their younger self a good life here in the present. And that's pretty exciting kind of shift to watch that happen. It's a whole different felt way of working, because on the front end they're pretty scared about taking and making change, and so it ends up feeling like, and we call that a lot, resistance. It's not resistance, it's just fear. So that's we'll talk more about that. This is the APA's CEU statement, which is required for all continuing education activities, to say that there's the possibility that what I'm going to bring forth in these next 3 days is beyond the scope of your practice. And use discernment. Verify, check out what I bring forward. And here's my rebuttal to that, is that there's over 400 citations for this course. Like, I've really been, and most of those are in the past 10 years. A lot of them in the past 5 or 6 years. And not to go deep into this, but we don't have evidence-based treatment for complex PTSD. We have evidence-based treatment for PTSD, but we don't have evidence-based treatment for complex PTSD. Partly because complex PTSD is not a diagnosis yet. It's going to be in the ICD-11. It will be a diagnosis for the WHO, but still not in the DSM-5 or the 5R yet. It's not diagnostic. So we've not kind of gotten serious in the United States about developing treatments that are specifically focused towards that. And there's the rub, is that there's never going to be a treatment model that's going to be effective, because it is relational. And with the relational aspects of that, you can't do it technically. Like, the technical stuff is secondary. There are technical things that you have to do, and we're going to talk about those, but those technical things have to be nested and ensconced in a relational process for them to be effective. And man, you are working with people that are hypersensitive to little shifts in relational little relational tweaks. Like, you take a second and space out, and the therapeutic relationship can be damaged significantly. And unless you're sensitive to that and can bring that forward, then what you've just done is you've just shut down treatment for the next month or period of time because they believe that you just slighted them, and now you've lost those gains. So that's why that feedback process has to keep happening, so that you're constantly repairing the ruptures of the therapeutic relationship, and that is crucial. And so while for this course, I've brought a whole lot of science-based stuff. That I've also a lot of evidence-based and science-based practice. I've also brought practice-based evidence. What the heck's that mean?
Stuff that works when we
Yes, that's right. And I think if I'm a clinician and I'm going to a training, I want to hear both. I want both and. I want somebody that has had experience sitting across from those folks and being able to take those science-based things and then to make sense of them in the delivery and the application of how that works differently with somebody who has complex PTSD than somebody that just has, some other manifestation of symptoms. Cool. And that's the last thing there is, for those of you that have had the previous course that I've trained, the way that we've done that is that instead of focusing on any particular model, what you'll remember on the first day is I did some extraction of the active ingredients of what work across all treatments, and then taken those active ingredients and turned them into a treatment structure that Bob and I have done called the empowerment and resilience structure, for being able to move through the course of treatment in stages, and those stages are the intentional delivery of what works with cognitive processing therapy, prolonged exposure, EMDR, all of those evidence-based treatments. So it's a generic approach to evidence-based treatment. I'm doing the same thing in this course with complex PTSD. So we're going to be following that same process, that same structure, but now attenuated much more towards complex PTSD than just simple PTSD.